Gray grosgrain ribbon. Say that 5 times fast. It's Alirien, and we are making the final pockets for Alyce today. I made the mock-up. I made one mock-up pocket and it was great, but then when I went to make the final pockets, I had misplaced it and I started just freehand drafting some new ones. And they worked for my purposes, but then as soon as I finished the first one, I found the mock-up. We are tracing off the final pockets from the original mock-up, and there's only a couple of tweaks that I really need to make. I'll show you what I've got. So this was the mock-up pocket, which y'all would have already seen the process of making. I'm gonna pull this pink ribbon off of it. That's just a zigzag stitch across the top, so I can remove that. And I am going to trace this shape exactly on the folded linen. This is folded over twice. It should be able to fit twice next to itself. The final pocket will probably be slightly smaller because I am going to just use this size and do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So it'll actually be yay wide at its widest point. It'll be this long instead of, it'll be about an inch shorter, an inch narrower. But the opening, I'm gonna bring the opening down 1.5 inches and make it 8 inches long. I've decided those exact measurements. And then I have gray grosgrain ribbon to use for the waistband, because the satin ribbon, I'm concerned if I use satin or poly satin, it might slip out of the bow. I think the grosgrain is gonna have a little more grip on itself. Plus my petticoat is gray, so this will be less noticeable should anything peek out. It shouldn't peek out, but just in case. We are gonna trace this off twice, pin the layers of linen together and cut them out. And then I think I might just use what's left of what I was gonna use for pocket 2 as the reinforcing layer for the pocket opening. So we're gonna set that aside and let's trace off this pocket. Now that the pockets are traced, I'm gonna go ahead and cut them out. So now I have the pocket opening marked 8 inches long from top to bottom. I have the top of it marked 1.5 inches down from the top of the pocket, and I've marked the bottom of the opening with a horizontal 2-inch line. I've done this on both of the front pieces that will have openings. I will be using this piece over the opening on this side, and I will probably use this excess smaller pocket cut for the other side. We're gonna get these stitched on. I'm going to be stitching as close to this as possible, probably leaving about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch distance. Then I will cut this open and trim a decent bit of excess, flip it to the inside, and stitch it again from the outside. So I have the facing piece stitched on, and I've gone ahead and cut the opening open, and I've made like a little V triangle. You can see it right there toward the ends, and that will help to facilitate the folding of the top in without there being any sort of bunching right in the corner there. So now I'm going to trim this down probably to about a 1/2 inch in width, and then turn it to the inside like so. So it'll look kind of like that with the seam line on the inside there. I know it's tricky to make out, but it'll be like that. And then I will stitch it down from one side or the other, probably about 1/8 to 1/4 inch from the edge. So let's get to trimming. Now that this has been stitched into place, I'm going to stitch this right sides together with the back piece. Alright, now I've trimmed the corners at the top now that it's stitched together, and I'm going to flip this right side out. And now we press it. I was not recording. Now that both of them are sewn, I've cut about 72 inches of the gray ribbon, and I measured about 27 inches in from each end for the point to center the pocket on. This pocket opening is about 27 inches in from this end, and from this end 27 inches to this pocket opening. The way I did that, my waistline when I'm wearing the shift and the petticoat is about 36 inches, so I doubled that, 36 to get around my waistline plus 36 to tie with. If you take out the excess 36 and go about halfway from the front to the back, that should line up perfectly with my hip and with the side seams in the top skirt. So that was my logic. So now I'm going to secure both of them along the top with a zigzag stitch to the ribbon, and they should be done. Ta-da! Hang on, let me move my arm. There we go. There's one pocket, and there's the other pocket, and there's the bow. Yay! There's a lot of extra room here. My actual skirt that I'm wearing today and my tank top and all seem to be providing just enough excess that it lines up pretty well. We have most of Alyce complete at this point, so now I am making her apron, which I really should not have put off quite this long, but what are you gonna do? So I am using the same white linen that I used for the shift and the pockets, and I'm actually doing this before I do the final cap, and it's really simple. It's 3 pattern pieces. I'll show you. This is the main front of the apron, this big rectangle which is being cut on the fold over there. I'm just gonna make, I think, the largest one and go from there, and I can hem it from there as well. It's a fairly long apron actually. Let me see how long this is. This piece is actually 36.5 inches long, which is pretty long. From my waist it goes below the midpoint of my shin, so it will definitely be hemmed, and I know the seam allowance is going to pull a decent amount out, but we're gonna make the large so it's as wide around as possible, and again I can take in excess if I need. And then there's 2 pieces for the ties which have fallen on the floor. This is the main waistband. This is the center front. This will be the center front of my waist, and it extends to both sides. And again, I'll just do the large of that. And then this is the end of the ties, which will be fairly long. We are gonna cut these pieces out. I need 1 on the fold of this, 2 of this, and then 1 fabric, 1 interfacing of this piece. So actually the center front of the waistband is gonna be fairly stiff and sturdy, which I like. That's why these are 2 separate pieces. So you can interface this one, but not worry about it on here. So we're gonna get these cut. I don't think I'll worry about serging because this will be an outer garment. So the serging, well, no, I'll serge it. I'll just have to fix the threading for I have to fix the threading because it decided to be a butt the last time I used it. Let's get this cut and we will go from there. I got all the pieces cut out. I actually was missing one of the pattern pieces when I first filmed for y'all. I had the skirt front and I had the 2 pieces of the ties, but I forgot that there's a piece for the skirt back. There are actually side seams to the skirt of this apron. It wraps almost all the way around. So I found it, I cut it out. I've also transferred all of the markings from the pattern pieces onto the fabric. So now I just have to stitch it together, and it seems to be, oh, I need to cut the interfacing. Forgot about the interfacing. I'll cut that in a moment. But it seems pretty simple. Stitch the skirt front to the skirt back pieces at each side. You gather down the front waist. I'm not sure what the measurement is yet, but I noticed the gather marking on the pattern pieces. I would imagine you gather it down to fit the width of the skirt waistband. Stitch the waistband to the front and then stitch the tie ends to the waistband. I think that's the order. I'll correct as we go here, but it's pretty simple. Oh, and then hem it, obviously. Turn in the edges and hem it. So it seems pretty simple. So I'm gonna go cut out that interfacing and then we will start stitching. Okay, interfacing got cut and it has now been basted on because it is a sew-in interfacing. That's what I had most readily available, and also because the instructions say to pin and baste the interfacing to the respective pieces. So interfacing is on the center waistband, and now we are going to stitch the skirt back sections to the sides of the skirt front. And we're using a 5/8 inch seam allowance for the whole pattern. Oh, they want me to hem the back side, the back vertical edges, 5/8 of an inch. Okay, I see now. Got it. Yeah, we're gonna do those couple of steps. So we have skirt back sewn to skirt front. That's the seam right there on both sides. I actually sewed one on the opposite direction and had to rip it out and put it back on. But we are good to go. There's the other seam. You can see the seam allowance under there. I also have hemmed the sides. I just ran a zigzag stitch. I used my ruler and marked a 5/8 inch width all the way down, and then used a zigzag stitch close to the cut edge on both sides. You can see that here as well. I am going to press these seams open and flat. Then the next step is wrong side of the page. No, this is the wrong page. There's the page. One moment, shuffling pages. There we go. So the next thing is to gather the upper edge of the skirt between the small circles. There it is. And I think we're leaving that center section ungathered. That appears to be what they did. We're gonna press and then we're gonna run some gather stitches. I've run a gathering stitch. I do 2 rows for gathering because it helps me to control it a little better, and it gives me an extra buffer in case one of the threads pops, because I had threads pop on me multiple times while working on the skirts and the shift. So we're running 2. I'm about to tie the knots at the hemmed edges. So yeah, we're gonna gather it down. Again, I don't know how much it wants me to gather it down. I guess to the length of piece 4. I'll see if it tells me. Yeah, we're gonna gather that down and tie it off and then move on to the next step. I thought I was recording, but apparently not. But I have gathered this down. So I ran the gather stitches. I tied knots at these ends, the outer ends, and then I ran the gathers in. And I realized that on the waistband and the skirt, there are notches partway through, and then there's also these markings. There's the boxes here, but there's also these dots here. So what I had to do is get the central pair of dots. There's one right here, and there's one right here. They're a little difficult to see because they're a little bitty pencil dots in my marking, but I had to line up these dots with the matching ones at the center of the skirt, which those are marked by these 2 pins here. There's a notch there, and there's a notch there. So I gathered it until the notches met, and then I gathered it until the ends matched these dots on the ends here, and these dots are a little far in from the edge. I imagine this is going to get turned in because this will get attached to the tie ends, so that's why there's a disparity there. We have gathered this in and I have it pinned in place because I'm not going to be doing anything else with this just yet. It then asked me to turn in the seam allowance on the upper edge, so this is the top edge of the waistband and this is the bottom edge, and press this seam allowance in. So I've done that, and now we are going to pin bottom edge to the skirt and adjust gathers as needed to make sure that everything matches. We'll baste it in place, make sure it's still staying where I need it to stay, and then we will stitch it. It says press seam toward waistband. Got it. So yeah, we're gonna pin this to this, sew it on.
What's happening at the test?
Fellow sewists and dressmakers and costume makers and what have you will understand this. I just had a mini panic because as I finished that basting seam, my top thread was the only thing that pulled out when I pulled away, and I thought, oh no, did my bobbin run out? My bobbin ran out right at the end of the seam. Like, I finished it and it had like an inch of thread left. That is a sewing win. I had just enough thread to finish that seam. I now have to go, well, actually, I have a full bobbin, so I don't have to go wind another one yet, but I didn't have to redo any of the seam. Yes. The skirt has been basted onto the waistband, so now I'm going to do the final stitch.
Steak or teacher. Can't say that the first step that said put in that the plate was positioned. The third step was just check for the landing and correctly. They don't actually say.
Step 9, with right sides together, fold each tie end. Piece 5, a long fold line, stitch, leaving end with symbols open. The notched end open. And turn right side out and press.
Based on memory before. It's hard to say. It was determined that the pressurization became insufficient for the flight to be. But at this altitude, you only have 60 to 90 seconds of useful consciousness. Whoa. Yeah, I'm gonna drop on you in a second. When the flight attendant finally noticed the F-16, there was no evidence he attempted to follow the F-16. The flight attendant actually had a commercial pilot's license. Yeah, it was issued. A commercial pilot's license. Pretty serious. He's got some good experience. Flying. Why is he a flight attendant? She wanted me to meet someone. And then on top of all that,
Like, they don't care about your as an individual in any capacity whatsoever.
Modern day China. What you do.
Regiments of
Okay, so we have made the ties. Turning them right side out was quite an endeavor. I was pulling with tweezers because my fingers were hurting trying to do it themselves, and then I was flicking them like whips when I got like halfway or more. They have been turned out and they have been pressed, and now I have pinned them to the outside of the waistband as the instructions say, and we are now going to baste them in place before folding the waistband and stitching the ends shut. Let's baste these and then we'll fold the waistband and stitch the ends. We are going to fold this way, stitch these ends, and then flip that out. So this will be entirely encased in the seam here. Let's do it. Alright, so now the waistband has been stitched to the tie ends, and I turned that out. So now the last thing to do is turn the entire waistband right side out, which I've done, press it into place, and then slip stitch the pressed edge over the seam. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna stitch through all the layers. I will switch to white thread, but I'm just gonna stitch through all the layers. I don't feel like hand slip stitching this. No one's gonna see it anyway. I'll be wearing like a belt over it. So yeah, we're gonna press that waistband and then we're gonna stitch it shut.
sail. I needed a stroke. It's so perfect. I kept trying to come up with
The waistband is stitched on, and I went and removed any of the visible gathering stitches that were on the front, so it's nice and clean and white for the most part. My zigzag stitch is a little noticeable, and I am upset with the interfacing company with, I think this is Pellon. Yeah, I'm upset with Pellon because they printed their interfacing with this along the edge, and you can see that through this linen, and I'm upset. But we are going to now turn up the hem. I'm not sure how much, but we're going to turn up the hem and stitch it, and then we're done. The instructions do not give a specific amount to turn up the skirt and hem it. They say to turn under a 1/4 inch on the raw edge and then sew or stitch close to the inner pressed edge. The pattern says to hem 1.25 inches. Well, I have pressed up the bottom inch because I don't think the extra 1/4 inch is going to make that big of a difference. If I still think it's too long, I'll hem it again. It's not a big deal. We've got it pressed, so it should stay pretty much in place, and I'm actually going to stitch it from the front so that the white thread is what is visible on the front. Let's stitch this hem and then we're done. She's done. Okay, friends, so we are making the St. Birgitte Cap today. I have already traced and cut out my pattern, and I went and found a scrap of lace in my cabbage patch that I'm going to use in place of the embroidered strip that goes down the center seam. So I'm going to cut a strip that is the appropriate length of this, and I'm going to leave it pretty wide because I don't remember how wide it's supposed to be, but we will check that and we will get there when we get there. And then all we have to do is sew this in between the two pieces and leave the bottom 2 inches unsewn. These two edges will get gathered down, and then I'll need to cut a long strip to go around the front edge and then be the wraparound piece to secure it. So let's get this lace strip cut. I did a little bit of looking, and I'm sure it varies from person to person, but one example I have found has the strip that goes in the middle that basically is the placeholder while you do the embroidery, is about 5/8 of an inch wide. So I'm gonna add an inch so I can have half an inch of seam allowance on either side to make it 1 inch and 5/8 wide. So I'm gonna cut out the strip, and what they actually did is basted it together, fell down the seam allowances, which I'm just gonna stitch them down with the machine. I'm doing this not the most historically accurate way. For one thing, I'm not doing embroidery, I'm just using pre-made lace. For another, I'm using a machine for all of my stitching. The only hand sewing that I'm doing on this entire costume are the eyelets, because metal eyelets would not have been accurate, they would not have existed yet, and to attach hooks into the backs of the skirts, because I just haven't had time to do all of it by hand. I would like to do everything by hand eventually, but I mean, I've got the machine, I've got the thread, I can do this. Most people who are gonna be seeing me aren't gonna be looking that closely at the costume, but I'm also taking artistic liberties here and there, so. My camera died and is charging, so I'm using my phone for the rest of this. But anyway, yeah, we are gonna cut out a lace strip that is about 15 inches long and 1 inch and 5/8 wide. We are gonna baste, well, we'll cut the lace and then we'll move on. So now we've got the lace strip cut. I went ahead and left this little edge on there. I'm going to hopefully have this visible at the front, though the linen section will probably, you know what? I'm gonna make this visible at the back. So this will be right above the gap of the lower 2 inches in the back. Put that at the back, and then we'll cut off whatever excess at the front. But now we are going to baste these together along the curve, and then I will stitch down the seam allowances and then take out the basting stitch to then attach this puppy. So let's do all of that. gotten these stitched and I've gotten the basting taken out. So next we are going to stitch this into place, starting 2 inches above the bottom in the back and going all the way up to the front, and then I will trim off whatever excess peeks out at the front.
Would you like a voodoo?
No, I've got water.
Okay. Is that one of those mini Dr. Peppers?
Thank you. I appreciate this, baby.
No, I didn't do nothing.
I know. And you didn't have to do nothing.
Okay. I hope you enjoy it. I didn't do a whole lot, but yeah. I hope at least taste. Love you.
I love you. Somebody brought me lunch. I love him. We've got the lace stitched in. There we go. You can tell that there's a bit of a lip to the fabric, but don't think that'll be a big deal once it's on my head. I'll have a straw hat over it anyway. If it still bothers me, I'll go back and stitch down near the folded edge instead of along this seam line. That's probably what I should have done in the first place, but shh, it's okay. Again, nobody's gonna be looking at the top of my head that well. I may just like tack down. Heck, maybe if I feel so inclined, I'll go in with white. I'll go in with white thread and like whip stitch it to the lace or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out. That won't be difficult to decide. But for now, next step is to gather this edge down. So I'm going to run some gather stitches from edge to edge here and gather it down to probably an inch, inch and a half. And then we are going to make the edge bind. Hang on. Okay. I had my hair pinned up to test fit for something, so ignore that. Now that I've got the strip sections all stitched together, I'm leaving the 2 ends open so that I'm leaving the 2 ends open so that I can start and end at one of these 2 back sections and then work my way around and then connect the ends up. I'm trying to decide how to do this. I think I'll start the end a little bit off of this edge and have both ends loose. I'll pick a spot somewhere in the middle to start and, like I said, work my way all the way around the outer raw edge of this. I will be trimming this excess bit of lace as well. I just wanted to leave it on until I was absolutely sure I wanted to trim it. And then we'll fold over, and I'll have to fold over whatever's not attached to the cap and stitch it to itself once the cap front edge is bound. So I just need my iron to heat back up so that I can press these allowances flat, and then I can attach to the cap. Friends, we have I sent Birgitte Cap. Buttercup here is modeling it because that was a little bit easier. You'll see the final images when I get B-roll of me wearing the whole costume. It's done. This little loopy bit, I'll kind of show you here. So this bit here pulls taut in the back like so and crosses over itself and then crosses back over the top of the head. That helps to secure it in place and keep it nice and snug, and I'll have milkmaid braids that will help to secure it even further. She's done. She looks great. I'm super proud of her. I'm still deciding about whether or not I want to whip stitch or just machine stitch that down. I'll figure it out, but yay! I made my first historic cap. I'm so proud. Now for the glamour shots. So here she is. This is Alyce in just about all of her glory, or at least all of her sewn glory. There are, of course, pieces that are missing from this that I myself did not make. They were purchased or they were altered. You will see all of the pieces when they come together. I'm planning on making a get ready with me style video showing the whole process of getting dressed, and that way you'll get to see the boots and the hat and everything else up close. But here is the cap, here's the apron, and here are the pockets underneath my skirt and over my petticoat. All three of these were fairly small projects. I completed each one in a single day across 3 separate days. They're super simple. The apron is obviously a lot more complicated than most people would do it, but I really like the finished product because it wraps so far around the skirt. It offers fantastic protection from the dirt and the dust on the grounds, as well as anything I might be working with for demonstration purposes. The cap is actually really nice because it keeps my hair against my head so it's not frizzy and wild all day, and it keeps me, period, plausible in that you can't see the blue and the purple in my hair. And the pockets have just been fantastic for function in so many ways. I've used them so much. I think I mentioned this in the skirt video. I've used them so much that the opening in the skirt on this side has split and needs to be mended because I go in and out of my pockets so much on any given day because I'm carrying things that I need for my role that are small enough that I wouldn't want them to get lost from anything else. But I'm also carrying things like my phone and my wallet and other things that modernity mandates I keep on my person pretty much 24/7. All three of these have been incredibly functional. As with everything else, they've been through 2 festival seasons now, and they've been to at least 1 Renaissance festival outside of my home fair, and they do so much to tie together the look. All 3 of these pieces just do so much, even though they're so small on their own and they're not necessary. They do a lot to make the costume not only more functional, but more complete. But this is just about all of Alyce. This is everything that I made for her. I'm super proud. As I said previously, I am rebuilding the smock and the bodice, so you will see videos on that. But there is actually one more sewn piece, and it's the piece that I wear the least often, but it makes a huge difference on misty days where the weather here in Louisiana feels a lot more like England, and especially on cold days or rainy days. Alyce's cloak. I made a full-length cloak out of the same gray linen I used for the petticoat with a full hood and a little toggle. So that will be the next video you see for this project. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you've been on the internet and YouTube long enough, you should know where all the buttons and the links are, right? If you'd like to see more content of Alyce Pestle or any other costumes I've made, check the cards and the description for my cosplay playlist. A huge thankful shout out to my lovely coven of patrons for being the biggest contributors and biggest factors in this content continuing to happen and being bigger and better as I go along. If you would like to join their ranks, check the link tree in the description. Patreon pledges start at $1 a month. Stay tuned for more Twitch VODs and Alyce's cloak, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Keep aiming, my loves. I do not know how hot it is out here right now, but in just the short amount of time that I have been filming to get this outro done for y'all, I have already broken a sweat. It's got to be like probably 96, 97 degrees with a heat index of 10 more degrees. I'm about to check and let y'all know when I get inside. Oh my gosh, I called it. It is 97. Let's see what the heat index is. Feels like 111. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm wearing linen. If I was in polyester, I would have melted. Oh, good gods. Sláinte.